There is a version of you that occasionally kidnaps your adult self. And most people don't discover their inner child in a leather chair in a therapist's office while listening to whale sounds. They discover it in a moment that is deeply, painfully embarrassing. It's a moment someone cancels plans at the last minute and you feel a wave of rejection so violent it feels like you're being kicked out of your own home. It's the moment a partner uses a specific sharp tone of voice, and suddenly you aren't a 35-year-old with a mortgage and degree anymore. You are 6 years old, heart hammering, bracing for a hit that isn't even coming. You make a tiny mistake at work, and the shame that washes over you is so heavy it feels like it has its own gravitational pull. You stand there, a fully grown adult, wondering, what the hell is wrong with me? Why am I overreacting like this? And there's a quote by Dr. Gabor Mate that explains this perfectly. When you are triggered, you do not act the age you are. You act the age the wound was created. That moment where your reaction doesn't match the room you're actually standing in is the first honest introduction to the part of you that never got to grow up. And I want to be clear. It's not because you're broken. It's because no one ever taught you how to go back and get that version of you. The inner child isn't some cheesy self-help cliche. It is a very real biological map that your nervous system built before you even had the words to describe what was happening. When you were little, you were a sponge. Before you had power or the ability to leave a bad situation, your body was quietly taking notes. If I'm quiet, mom stays calm. If I get straight A's, dad looks at me with pride instead of annoyance. If I fix everyone's problems, I get to stay in the tribe. That map didn't get thrown away when you got your driver's license. It's tucked under the floorboards of your brain, and it's still running the show. The reason you over-explain yourself during a tiny disagreement isn't that you're annoying. It's because once upon a time, being misunderstood had terrifying consequences. The reason you shut down when someone gets too close isn't because you're cold. It's because love came with a price tag that you couldn't afford to pay. You didn't choose this. A child doesn't decide to be anxious. A child adapts to survive. And your adaptation was brilliant. It kept you safe. The problem is that no one ever tapped you on the shoulder to tell you that the environment changed. You're still wearing a suit of armor to a pool party, and you're wondering why you're sinking. I know this because I lived it. My inner child wound was a fixer wound. I grew up believing that my only value was what I could do for other people. I gave until I was completely depleted. And then I gave a little more because the thought of stopping felt more dangerous than the thought of disappearing. For years, I ran a rescue mission disguised as friendship. The most expensive lesson I ever learned came from a friend I'd known since middle school. When we reconnected as adults, it started small. I'd buy coffees, then I'd buy the dinners. Then I heard she was struggling financially, and my fixer brain went into overdrive. I can save her, I thought. I helped her launch and build her business from scratch. I gave her hours of my professional consulting for free because helping her felt like familiar love. It spiraled. I was buying things for her kids, paying for trips, even lending her my car. During her divorce, I handed her my credit card. I helped with a deposit on her rental house. I even hired her to work for me, and then the floor fell out. I found out she'd been lying about her hours, logging in extra minutes that eventually added up to thousands of dollars. She was stealing from me in the quietest, most personal way possible because I handed her access freely. She had been living my lifestyle for nearly 3 years on my dime and my hard work. And I had let her do it because my inner child thought that was what a good friend does, and that being a good friend meant being a human ATM. Looking back, I don't feel shame for that version of myself. I feel a deep, aching compassion. I wasn't stupid. I was a wounded little girl in an adult body trying to buy safety with generosity. My inner child believed that if I gave enough, I would finally be unleavable. I believed my value was measured by how much I was willing to sacrifice. I called it loyalty, but it was actually self-abandonment. The friendship ended the exact second I asked for reciprocity. Not for the money back, just for her to show up for me the way I had for her. That was all it took. When you stop being a resource and start being a person, people who are only there to consume will vanish. Her exit was brutal, but it cleared the air in a way that I can't even describe. The year after this friendship ended, once I stopped hemorrhaging my money, time, and emotional energy into a bottomless pit, my business grew over 300%. That wasn't a coincidence. When you stop pouring your life force into an old wound, that energy has to go somewhere. It went into building something real. My personal growth and business growth were the exact same thing. Reparenting isn't about sitting in a room and talking to a stuffed animal. In practice, it's the gritty, uncomfortable work of becoming the stable adult presence that you never had. And it looks like this. When the wave of shame hits you at work, instead of joining in and calling yourself an idiot, you pause. You take a breath. You say to yourself, I see you. You're panicked because you think a mistake means that you're going to be abandoned. I'm here. We're safe. I'm the adult now. And I'm not going to let anybody talk to you like that. Not even me. It's about offering yourself the consistency, warmth, and protection you always deserved, but you didn't get. A lot of people stop here because this work requires grief. To reparent yourself, you have to admit that you need it. You have to admit that there was a gap. For a lot of us, that feels like a betrayal of our parents. We think they did their best. I shouldn't be complaining. Both can be true. Your parents could have done their absolute best and you still could have been left with an empty cup. Admitting you have a wound isn't an insult to them. It's an act of honesty for you. If you don't face the grief, it doesn't go away. It just stays in your body as chronic anxiety or shows up in your relationships as desperate need for validation. But as you heal, over time, something beautiful happens. The little you inside begins to trust the adult you that's in charge. The triggers don't necessarily disappear. You're still human, but they lose their power to hijack you. You start to catch the pattern in the middle of it instead of at the end. You start to have a tiny gap between the moment someone uses that tone and that moment you react. In that gap, you have something you never had as a kid: choice. You have agency. You have the ability to say, this is an old ghost, not a new problem. You start to realize that the safety you were chasing through overworking, overgiving, and overachieving were never out there. It wasn't in the next promotion or the next person who says that they love you. It was always waiting for you to show up for yourself. You aren't going back into the past to live there. You're going back to get someone who was left behind. And when you finally bring that version of you home, when you start showing that kid that they are safe, that they are enough even when they are not being useful, and that you aren't going anywhere, something in your soul finally settles. You stop running, you stop performing, and you just arrive. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, subscribe, and leave a comment.